I never would have picked up The Shining if it wasn't for one of you guys recommending it to me. What I consider to be the most frightening book I've ever written. He's such an unreliable narrator. If we're gonna go really dark, this is my prediction. And now I'm just like, it's cute, but it's Stephen King. Hello friend, welcome back to my channel. I am very excited and also very nervous for this video. You probably already know what I'm doing based on the title and thumbnail, but I am reading Stephen King for the first time. He's just like a legend, you know, it's like everyone knows Stephen King and he has so many books out. I just want to understand like what makes him so popular, what is his writing style like, and I think the only reason why I never really picked up a Stephen King book before is just because of the genre he typically writes in, which is horror, and I have never read a horror book before. I am just the type of person who I don't seek out scary movies. Going to things like Not Scary Farm or Universal Fright Night, just really, I am such a jumpy person. But I am challenging myself. Like one of my reading goals for this year was to read a Stephen King horror book. And we are doing that in today's video. So yeah, so I am both very excited and nervous. I even feel like when I look at this book, it makes me a little scared. And that's just me being a scaredy cat. But speaking of cats, the first book I'm gonna read is actually gonna be Pet Sematary. And I'm not gonna lie, when I was looking at the books in the Stephen King section at the bookstore, this was the only one where I was like, oh, okay, I could do it maybe. It has like a cute little cat on the front. This is what happens when you judge books by their covers, because little did I know, this is supposed to be one of the scariest books he has ever written. And that's what he thinks. So we are gonna face our fears today and read a horror book. I'm actually really excited because yes, I'm a little nervous, I'm kind of scared, but I am excited to just see like what's up. Like why is he so popular? Why do people love his books? Yeah, honestly, I don't even know what this book is about. Okay, you know what? I'm not even gonna read the back. I'm just gonna go into this completely blind and just go with the flow. We're just gonna see what happens, and I will let you know how I'm feeling. So let's get into my first Stephen King novel, Pet Sematary. There's like an introduction by Stephen King right in the beginning. Introduction, Stephen King. When I'm asked, as I frequently am, what I consider to be the most frightening book I've ever written, the answer I give comes easily, with no hesitation. Pet Sematary. It may not be the one that scares readers the most. Based on the mail, I'd guess the one that probably does that is The Shining, which is also another book one of you guys recommended to me, and I was gonna read it, but I feel like The Shining was one of the books that I felt like I could thrift. So after I read this book, if I like it, I'm gonna see if I can find The Shining at a thrift store, and then we'll maybe read that. If I like horror, we'll see. Okay, so he says, at least in terms of what the public would accept, but certainly I had gone too far in terms of my own personal feelings. Put simply, I was horrified by what I had written and the conclusions I'd drawn. All right, so it has been, I think, a week since I last updated this vlog. I mean, for you, it's been like literally 2 seconds, but I took a bit of a break from reading this book because my hold on book lovers actually came up on Libby. So I jumped into that since I was kind of in like a summer romance mood after my last video, which was reading Emily Henry for the first time. So when that hold came up, I needed to read it because it was one of the books on my list that I didn't get to. So I finally got into a good chunk of the book last night. I'm not gonna lie, It took me a while to get into this book. Like, I think the first 50 pages took me like 4 days to get through, not because the writing was bad. This is my first venture into the horror genre as a whole, and took some getting used to, I think, for me. I mean, the font type is even different than the books I typically read. The tone is darker, the ambiance, the setting of where things take place. Even the characters that are in here are just different than what I'm used to. It took me a while to just get used to this type of setting and this type of writing that is what this type of book requires. Now that I'm 140 pages in, I think I can actually finally kind of give a synopsis of what this book is about. No spoilers. This book starts off with Louis Creed and his family, his wife and 2 kids. They move to a new location. The house is kind of remote. He only has really one neighbor that's nearby, and they become really close friends. It's like this older couple. And our main character, Louis Creed, he's a doctor. He actually moved his family out to this house and to this area because he got a job at the hospital at the nearby university. He moves his family out there, and you kind of get to see life as they are starting to get used to the house, the location, his job. Within the first few within the first few chapters is when you actually kind of start hearing about this pet cemetery that he stumbles upon. It's basically this old pet cemetery that the local kids only really know about, and where they tend to bury their animals when they die. It's kind of this creepy place, and the reason why Pet Sematary is actually spelled like this is because that's how it was spelled on the sign to that cemetery. Louis Creed is our main character. He starts building this bond with this couple that lives nearby. His kids are getting used to going to school there. His wife has a job. Right in the beginning, I think like on page 54 or something like that. I don't even remember. But it's pretty early on because it's basically on his first day of work, something happens that is just like, it's basically where this book takes a turn. And just stemming from that is where a lot of things start taking place. And I'm trying to be super vague about this. These type of books, you kind of want to go in a little bit blind. So I think what I'm going to try to do during this video, especially for these books, is just to kind of talk more about how I was feeling during my reading experience, if that makes sense. So it took me a while to get into Pet Sematary. Like I said, the tone's just different. The writing style is a little different because it's geared towards this genre, and it just wasn't something I was used to. But I am so glad that I stuck with this, because once the first instance kind of happens and it's a turning point in the book, it was also a turning point for me as a reader and my experience reading horror. Like, I feel like that was the moment when I really realized, like, oh, I get it. I get why people like this genre, because it takes like a really special writer to be able to paint a picture so vividly with words where you feel just as creeped out as the main character. You feel like you are there. And I was so impressed by that, because I feel like it just takes a special type of writer to understand how to do that. I've just been having a really good time with it. I am excited to see like what the heck is happening here, because I'm at the point in this book around page 140 where repercussions of something that our main character did is now happening. So I am 254 pages in, and wow, it took a turn that I kind of guessed, but then when it happened, I got in a bunch of pages last night, and yeah, it gets like pretty dark, but so basically I'm in part 2 out of 3 parts in this book, and man, I don't know. It's like you go through so much of the book, start to get to know all the characters, you kind of feel for them, you like them, and then part 2 happens. And now I'm just like, it's funny because now I'm in this part where I'm like, oh no, don't do it, Louis. Don't do it. Yeah, after reading last night's chunk, my mouth dropped when it was just kind of revealed My mouth dropped, but I also like somewhat guessed maybe 100 and something pages in that something like this was going to happen. When part 2 happened and the big thing happened, I immediately was like, oh, it's going there. Like, it's going to the part that I guessed, and it's kind of fun to read that, but also I'm like, oh, it's so sad. It's sad and horrible, and it is definitely horror and so different from my summer rom-coms that I've been reading. But I'm really glad that I picked up Stephen King because I feel like it just opened my eyes to this genre. I'm hoping to finish this book. I have a little over 100 pages left, so maybe I won't finish, but I hope to finish this soon and I'll keep you updated. But yeah, it's so good. I am 228 pages into The Shining, and this is so good. I know I still haven't given an update on Pet Sematary yet. I kind of just ended up jumping straight into The Shining, but tomorrow I will definitely give an update on Pet Sematary, my thoughts on it, and then also give an update on The Shining. So far, I am loving it. I think what I like the most about this book is just the pacing is really good. It's really quick and fast, and it just keeps going and going and going, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm only, again, 228 pages out of 650 something, so yeah, this much through, but I'm really, really enjoying it. And I am so surprised because honestly, this book just does not look like it would be something that's up my alley, but apparently, I don't know. I am just like pleasantly surprised by this. Hello. Okay, so it is the next day. I'm finally ready to give my update on Pet Sematary. I finished it about a week ago, and I feel like for some reason I am just reading slower in the month of August. I don't know if it's because it's just the warmer weather and just it's life in general, I don't know. But finished Pet Sematary last week, and wow. First horror book done. Slow in the beginning for me because I was getting used to the genre, the writing, the darker tones and vibes, and the way that he was describing things. Like, Stephen King does such a good job just like setting the tone and like setting the scene for what is going to happen in this book. And when the first shoe drops, I feel like here's the level. Like, this is the level of the first shoe that drops. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I'm invested. Second shoe drops, and it kind of, that's where you start realizing what's happening. Like, oh, okay, so this is why that first thing happened, and now I'm starting to get the whole background of this story and like why it's creepy and why that Pet Sematary is, you know, creepy. And then it's like you get to this third act, and when I say my mouth dropped to the floor, I was like, wait, you are not. In the middle, when we find out what's happening, I feel like Stephen King hints at what the ending is going to be like. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, if we're going to go really dark, this is my prediction. And lo and behold, my darkest prediction is what happened. Even though I somewhat predicted it, it happening actually still made my mouth drop. But then Stephen King throws this curveball in, which also made my mouth drop when all of a sudden, I can't say more. I don't want to ruin this for people who haven't read the book. I gave this a 3.5. My first step into the horror genre. I now understand what it means to be a horror book. The darker tones, the ambiance, the vibe, the not just it being creepy, but also just like dark things that you would think would be just like, not evil, but ugh. But like to this main character, it was in his mind, it made sense. And that is almost the scariest thing. It was slow in the beginning for me, but in the second half, when the pacing picked up, I just ate it up. So good. But again, it did take me a while to get into, so that's why I kind of landed on a 3.5. So I would recommend this book to anyone who's interested in the horror genre. However, The Shining. If you want to step into the horror genre for the first time, I would recommend this book that you start off with. So I would recommend this one for anyone who is just getting into horror, because the pacing right off the bat is just perfect. It's just go, go, go right from the get-go. There's stuff happening. You're starting to understand like what The Shining is, who our main characters are, and getting their backstories right away. This one I'm only halfway through and I am already just eating it up. I am already kind of creeped out. I've already kind of had a scary dream about this. I understand why this is one of his most popular books of all time. Went into this again completely blind. I at least now know what the horror genre is like, so I had at least those expectations. Never seen The Shining movie. Never really read the back cover of this book at all, so I didn't even know what the like plot of the story was. I simply picked this up because one of you guys recommended it to me, so thank you so much. And it was recommended to me because I have Billy Summers on my bookshelf over here, and I had mentioned that it was one of my Stephen King books that I really want to read, and then one of you guys recommended reading The Shining to me because I guess there's something in The Shining that's referenced in Billy Summers. And The Shining is about this family who, it's Jack Torrance, Wendy Torrance, and Danny Torrance. So it's a small family who end up taking over this hotel for the winter. Winter is the slowest time at this really nice Colorado hotel. It gets snowed in basically, and yeah, they just need a caretaker for the grounds to just make sure that everything stays okay while the rest of the staff go on basically winter vacation. And so this book basically follows the Torrance family as they are staying at the Overlook Hotel during the winter time. And it's following their journey of like finding out what happened at this hotel, what's happening at this hotel. And there's just a lot of like eerie instances and just like creepy things that are happening. And I can't say more because I just read the back again and realized that it doesn't really give you that much detail about what's actually happening. But this book is multiple POVs, which I think is really interesting because it's like you see different scenes play out from different point of views. To me, it's interesting to see how Stephen King writes this Jack character. Like, he's such an unreliable narrator because of just like who he is and his personality, that it just makes the book a little more interesting. And it was kind of almost hard for me to follow what he was trying to say and like what is real and what wasn't real, just because like he's just so unreliable. So I started underlining things, not just to follow Jack's like rambles and like his inner monologue that's like so unreliable, but I also started underlining things that just made me admire Stephen King, I think, because Stephen King in general, like it's not just the scary things that pop out at you, creepy, scary horror things in this book, but it's also just how he infuses just pages of where it should just be an ordinary scene, but then he is just like implanting all these worst case scenarios in your mind, where then it's just like, ew, it's like a bunch of it could happens that he's instilling in your brain that all of a sudden now you're okay, now I'm worried for him. Whereas before I would be like, oh yeah, that kind of sucks, but I wouldn't be worried for our character, or if I was the character, I wouldn't be worried, if that makes sense. But basically, I'm enjoying it so far. Can't wait to see what happens next. I'm hoping to finish this book within the next few days, so we'll check in with you guys with my final thoughts. So I'm at this part in the book right now where everything feels too good to be true. Like he's setting this really cute picture of like the family and they're sledding and having such a good time. And I just know that it's cute, but it's Stephen King. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I knew it was too good to be true. And now, part 4, here I go. I finished The Shining, and all that I can say is just, wow. This was just one of those books where when I finished it, I literally just closed it and just contemplated life. This was so good. Like, I had such a great reading experience with this book. It was fast-paced, definitely a page turner. It was creepy, scary. The scares just kept on coming up until the end, and yeah, I can honestly say I don't think horror is my preferred genre, but I had such a good time reading this book. This was literally one hell of a ride, and I would honestly recommend this book to anyone who wants to give horror a try. I think out of the 2 Stephen King books I read, Pet Sematary and The Shining, I would definitely recommend The Shining as a good starter horror book. I think Pet Sematary, I feel like this book might have been a better time for me if I had read The Shining first, only because I feel like The Shining is more like traditionally what you would expect from a horror movie, a horror book, and just this genre in general. I feel like what makes Pet Sematary so creepy and scary is just the lengths someone is willing to go to for someone that they love. And yeah, like this was definitely creepy, but this one, The Shining, I understand. 5 out of 5. It was so fun. So fun. Thoroughly creeped out. Like, if you just want a good scare, you like scary movies, you're gonna like this book. And just coming from a person who I actually don't like scary movies, and being in like the darker, eerier vibed movies, I just tend to not watch. I like happier movies. Anything that's like too intense, I usually like steer clear from, just because I am such an empath. I feel like I just feed off of the energy of things. But this book, yes, I was creeped out. Yes, I was scared, but it was so fun. Like, the pacing's so good. There's something happening literally on every page. It is basically Stephen King's take on a haunted hotel. And tell me why, when I was reading this book, I was getting these like flashbacks of watching the old Disney Tower of Terror movie. And obviously this is way scarier than Tower of Terror, that Disney Channel movie. But I kept getting these like flashes of images because there's a certain trope I feel like that comes, and like certain characteristics that come with like haunted hotel books and movies that you'll definitely see in this book. Yeah, I had such a good time, and I just honestly want to take a moment to just shout out. I'm going to leave the screen grab of their comment right here, but thank you so much for recommending this book. Like, this is why I love BookTube and just having this channel. It's because I get to hear from you guys and hear your thoughts and recommendations on books and things that you like reading, because this was definitely not even on my radar of books I ever thought I was gonna read. I am so grateful. This book was so good, and I never would have picked it up if it wasn't for you leaving that comment. So just shout out to you. Thank you so much for this recommendation. I had such a great time with this. What a journey this has been, you guys. Thank you so much for the people who recommended me these books. I had such a fun time just stepping into horror for the first time, reading Stephen King for the first time. I'm excited to read Billy Summers and some of his other works that are not so in the heart of the horror genre. After reading The Shining, I think I definitely would read another one of his horror books. If you guys have any other Stephen King recommendations for me, definitely let me know down in the comments below, because like I said before, I never would have picked up The Shining if it wasn't for one of you guys recommending it to me. So thank you so much for taking the time to just leave your recommendations. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me step into Stephen King and the horror genre for the first time. If there's any other authors you'd like to see me read for the first time, or if you have any other book recommendations or book videos that you would like to see, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys next time. Bye!